Hi all, and welcome to the Stewardship Network's monthly webcast. Really pleased to be here with you during the Stewardship Network's monthly webcast. I'm Lisa Brush with the Stewardship Network and really pleased to be here with Mike Bald from Got Weeds. Mike, I think we met when you made your way to a Stewardship Network conference 8 years ago, getting on maybe?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. So it's been great. So it's been fun for to get to know Mike and the work that he's been doing. So looking forward to sharing that with you all over the next little bit. I want to tell you a little bit about the Stewardship Network if you are new to the Stewardship Network. We are a 501c3 nonprofit with a 20-year national and international award-winning history. We serve geographically place-based member communities from the Great Lakes to the Pacific Coast. And those geographically place-based member communities are made up of all of the people and organizations who care for land and water in a given community. And then they do on the ground cross-boundary stewardship and learning and engagement and workshops. And for those of you who may be new, our North Carolina friends who just are getting to know us, these happen each and every second Wednesday of the month. So I encourage you all to put a recurring, we've been doing them since 2005, I think. So way back when everybody's like, whoa, that is so cool that you're doing this virtually. And we're able to come together with people from all across the country who are engaged in stewardship. So I encourage you all to put a recurring event in your calendar, second Wednesday during the Eastern time zones, noon hour, West Coast, put 9 a.m. hour, put a recurring event in your calendar and then just pop over to our website and see if the topic of the month interests you. We're here, we've done hundreds and hundreds of these. And so we'll be here coming together and sharing ideas and information. I encourage you all to continue to make liberal use of the chat as well as the Q&A. You can drop questions that you have. I'll keep track of them in both the chat and the Q&A, wherever you want to drop them. I'll keep track of those. And our mission is to connect, equip, and mobilize people and organizations to care for land and water in their communities. And we do that in lots of different ways. We mobilize making ecological stewardship accessible to all, and we do that in all kinds of different ways. That's all of our on-the-ground prescribed fire, invasive species control. We do strategic planning to help keep people out there doing the work that they do. All about habitat management, biological diversity, and landscape connectivity. Oh, you don't want to do that. Let's keep going there. We equip, so we remove the hurdles and provide resources so that you all can pour hundreds and thousands of hours into our native ecosystems. And we equip with all kinds of different things. We provide stewardship training, we provide resources, we do some of the backbone work, the event management and website development that you all shouldn't all have to do yourselves, and we can provide that support to our member communities. We know how to jump through grant hurdles, big, small, moving constantly, and we can provide the fiduciary support so that you all can have the financial resources to do the work that you do, and we have the relationships with the grantors and those kinds of things as well. We connect. And that's one of the things that we love to do. We connect. We connected with you all last week during the conference. We connect here to share ideas and information. So again, looking forward to being with Mike to share with you all today. As we said, the monthly webcast, second Wednesday of each and every month, Eastern time zones, noon hour, recurring event in your calendar. So we connect in lots and lots of different ways. Stewardship Network Conference just wrapped up last week. Great chance to be with you all over a couple of days. It was the best attended online conference we've had, with hundreds of you joining us for a couple of days of great networking and information exchange, both in the presentation. If you are registered, the recordings are all now available to all of you. And we want to thank all of our attendees and speakers and sponsors and room monitors and our TSN team and our partners and peers for you all for showing up. It was a fabulous 16th annual Stewardship Network conference. If you attended, remember, we want to hear from you. We sent you an email with a survey. We want to know what you loved, what you didn't love. And as always, each and every year, your candid feedback helps us make this event better and better and better. So let us know. Hey, you didn't know about the conference? You're just learning about it now? It's online. Somebody drop into the chat to sign up. Sign up for our emails and we'll keep you in the loop. Reach out to us. We're here each and every day wanting to connect with you all. So our doors are always open. So find out, ask us any question that you have. Somebody else just posed a question to us. They're looking to set up a photo monitoring for their restoration sites, and they didn't know who to connect with. And we're like, yeah, we'll connect you with a few folks about that. So with that, That's what the Stewardship Network is. Any questions you have about who we are, what we do, feel free to drop them in the chat. We can drop some contact info in the chat. We're happy to, you can email us at staff@stewardshipnetwork.org. But with that, I want to turn to the real reason we're here. Mike Bald is the founder of knotweed, and he is going to take us through, are we lost in the weeds? How do we do this stuff? Where do we get started? How do we make this all happen? And so, Mike, with that, I will mute myself. I'll be here to keep track of questions, but let me turn it over to you to take it from here.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. I'll just share my screen. Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
All good, Lisa. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. I'm thrilled to hear how the good energy from the conference, and congratulations to you all for putting that on yet again. Thank you all for joining today, making time in your schedules. Very much appreciated. I certainly hope to make it worth your time. I listen to the introduction of the Stewardship Network doing such great things. I can just salute that great energy that all of you bring to that conference, and the ones that you hold in your own realms, in your own orbits. So thank you. There's just truly thanks for your good work. I know we have an audience from all around. The geography was impressive. I just have to make sure I cover all the bases. So I know you're supposed to do this if you're in the stadium. I just have to make sure if mom and dad are on. Hi, mom. Cover that base. No hard questions, by the way. So again, thanks for joining in. And the conference was inspiring as always, and certainly the water ceremony to me stands out. And I want to just further that acknowledgement by just urging us all to, in light of the current state of the world, just put some energy into healing and peace, and just, you know, let's all try to move forward and get along together. I think it's important to say that. So let's begin today with, there's your theme. I'm attempting to offer you some hope today so that you can get past the blues and the nightmares and the parsnip peeve. I will say this is not a linear presentation where I'm not going to walk you through this from step to step to step and bring you to the finish line, because that's not what happens in the real world. So this is your first challenge. I'm going to throw it all out there, and bits and pieces will go here and bits will go there. So that's what happens in nature. We step out into the world, get out there and take a deep breath, open the mind, open the eyes and ears, open the heart, and soak it all up. So important to point that out. You know, this is very circular and cyclical, just like the areas and the wonderful places we're stewarding. So the flow will be interesting today. Thank you for accommodating me in that regard. That's my very capable assistant there on the left, Tree Guy, has been with me for quite some time. There's my information, the email address and the website. The only thing I did not add is that I started the company in 2010. So I'm preparing to enter my 13th growing season as knotweeds. And the geography is there. I basically work from the coast to the Adirondacks. My website, I tried to update it yesterday and put some of my most recent articles on there. So I think things are good. Feel free to, throughout the course of the presentation, if you have questions or observations, put those in. And Lisa has agreed and certainly stepped up to keep an eye on that. So Bob reached out some time ago and said, Mike, we would love to have you present, and I'm very grateful for that. And I thought about it and I said, you know, I'm not going to just, I've presented for the Stewardship Network in the past on safety and what is stewardship, and I think Japanese knotweed as well. But I wanted to go deeper, and I knew that you all wanted to go deeper. So I thought about it last summer and I thought, you know, there's a mindset here that we don't talk about often enough. So everything on that screen is what I have encountered, I mean, literally within the past 2 years. And we've all heard it, Mike, it can't be done. It's an issue of scale that you can't, you know, you got an entire river corridor here. I did hear the second line there. I never want to have to come back out here. That I heard that like 10 years ago. And I thought, if you're going to be in resource management, you need to come back out and stay out and be out where the action is, or find some kind of a new path. I would really like to point out here the bottom points, bottom of the screen: war on weeds, good versus bad. That's not my thing. I hope that's not your thing. I do encounter people ask me, you know, they see me in the bushes thrashing around. Oh, what are you doing in there? Battling the buckthorn. And I take a deep breath and say, no, this is actually, I'm fostering the rebound of native species and encouraging site transition. And I had a guy apologize to me last year. He said, I'm sorry I went that direction. So I think that's important. There is no right or wrong in nature. This is not my quote, but I adhere to it. There is no right or wrong in nature, only consequence. Finally, at the end there, I've been told that my methods, my approach are not cost effective. I've yet to see anybody put as much energy into building soil, building ground nesting bird habitat with cuttings and, let's say, buckthorn canopies, and I prune apple trees. So all my cuttings go down to build soil and build habitat, and that doesn't get measured in the world of cost effectiveness. I never have to close my sites when I'm working, because I'm not using anything that would be a hazard to people or their pets. And I'm actually encouraged to engage people if they have questions. So that's why I decided that today we would get into the mindset a little more deeply. And I know you've all seen situations like this, the bittersweet multiflora rose thrash, which is what that is. There might be some grapevine in there. I believe the yellow buttercups are even non-native creeping buttercup, just to add to the challenge. But there's a stone wall in there, and there's a wood line with, you know, a good mix of a diverse mix of native trees and shrubs. But where do you start here, and like, what does that even look like? And I would submit that you have to start from a safety perspective, because there is no justification for getting people injured or hurt in the process of reclaiming a pasture or transitioning a site or bettering biodiversity. So if you were to just jump into this bittersweet, multiflora rose, buckthorn, honeysuckle thrash, if you didn't actually take the time to come up with a plan, you would encounter what's actually behind the green screen, and this would probably make for a rough day once you started tugging on vines and ripping all this material down. So you start with safety, which leads me to say that when I start in on a site, the goals that I'm after, we could stop the presentation right here, because I'm always setting the stage for my return. I intend to be there. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, if it's not me, it's the landowner, because I do train people and teach them how to be the one who returns. I mean, that's what I'm after, is empowering people on their own land. It's kind of my way of eternalizing the commitment to good stewardship. So I would suggest when we do that, we set the stage, we learn individually how to operate safely and efficiently. So finding efficiency is a big deal, and you can do it collectively as well. There's no reason why one person can't do the stump cutting and one or two other people can haul off the crowns, the canopy, and build the brush piles. It's an art to build a good brush pile. So and to do it time efficiently. So that's something to learn. I would like to point out, rehabilitation is such a key word for me. It comes before restoration, because we have to acknowledge that most of our landscapes are depleted, calcium deficient, low organic matter, compacted. They had a century of acid rain. So you really do need to acknowledge we're rehabilitating the space, regenerating, if you will, rejuvenating. Restoration has its place, but it begins with acknowledging the depletion of the land, of the site. And I did listen to an organic farm presentation just last week, and I thought it's brilliant to hear these people talk about growing food not just as a commodity, but they appreciate that their customers are buying or supporting their story, the story of the farm, whether it's pigs or chickens or corn or vegetables or hay or maple syrup. There's a story, and every site that we work on also has a story. I'd like to point out on the oak tree there, that little placard, that little wooden square in the crack on the tree. That I didn't put that there, but that tree draws people, and the wording on there states, "We can heal together." So people are seeing that. And I just think that's powerful. So really, there you go. Again, these are the major points. These are the takeaways I'm trying to instill. Safety, no compromise. Efficiency will get you there. And once you master the efficiencies of a site and you get your lessons learned, you'll see that maybe the first year it doesn't look like you did anything. But if you've set the stage and you can come back in year 2 and year 3 and not have to climb through like a pickup sticks thrash because you actually managed your cut material, responsibly, or mulched it on site or whatever you did, your efficiency just increases, and the progress in year 2, 3, 4, people are amazed. I would like to say, additionally, I'm going to make the point one more time that it's an ethic of service, not the warrior mentality. Because yes, you can be weed warriors. You can, however you want to look at it, but it's not a war on weeds. And really, the ultimate start point, the ultimate grounding for the warrior mentality is that it's a service ethic. Not my quote, but I'll just repeat it. In serving each other, we become free. I love that. So we really begin with, now that we know what our goals and accomplishments and what we're trying to operate safely and as a team and be efficient, it really starts with the planning. So it's not for me to say, but I ask people, what is the vision for this space? What are you trying to accomplish? Keep it open, let it tree in, let it fill in, let it grow in. Bring in grazing animals or not. Are you intending to convert this to a sugar bush for maple syrup or not? I then tell people, these are the species that I'm seeing that you have. These are the ones I would prioritize from what I've learned. And this is what your site will allow. Because there are certainly things that you have to consider on sites that, steep slope, no uprooting, no potential. I don't want to do anything that would cause erosion. And I have the next slide. I'll emphasize that with the next slide. But in this particular case, this is South Burlington, Vermont. That's a wetland, so the puncheons there, the walkway, that's obviously to keep people out of the water. So this is typically underwater, ankle deep, right into June, depending on the year. The goal, the vision that the city expressed to me for this site was, Mike, support ecological function, maintain water quality, and support passive recreation. That's what the walkway is. So we've got people, nothing motorized, but you've got people walking, bird watching, walking their dogs, just getting outdoors. Brilliant. I support that. The idea of preserving water quality and ecological function. I'm not using anything toxic. I'm not altering the environment that's there already. I would like to think I'm actually bettering the situation. So that's the vision in the case of this wetland in South Burlington. When I talk about the site, allowing certain things or not, you look at this Japanese stiltgrass site. I do know that Japanese stiltgrass is an issue in Michigan. I salute your good work on that. And here we have a wonderful volunteer. Ainsley is pulling Japanese stiltgrass. I would love to have been able to flame this site, but it's not going to happen because that little feature in the background is not conducive to what's the rule? No open flame within 50 feet or 100, whatever it is. I can't do it. I would love to flame this site, but looking even beyond that, I have to think, this was August, September here in the photo. I have to think, the delivery truck's going to show up soon and start dropping off propane, filling the tank. And are they going to drive right through this material and pick up seed and spread it to the next house, down the street? This is a neighborhood infestation, and it's challenging. And I've already started a conversation with one propane company. There are several that I have to hopefully reach out to. So that's an example. Sites will only allow certain treatment methods. I want to point out that really, stewardship is, we build our plan, but it's all, the plan is basically how do we implement stewardship, and what is stewardship? So I told Lisa I would invite you all as I speak here, if you would like to pop into the chat a word or two, 1 or 2 words that pops in your head. What is stewardship? And I would mention that before I throw my input up on the screen, I think it's a really one of our biggest mistakes are that realm of timeframes and expectations, because I've had people tell me more than once, Mike, I had a wonderful class of students out for the morning. They were out for 3 hours and 20 kids, and we didn't get anything done. And she really had a pained expression on her face. And I said, hang on a second. Did anybody get hurt? No, nobody got hurt. Oh, good, that's good. Did the kids have a good time? Oh yeah, they had a great time. Okay, check, mission accomplished. You did it. Yes, the kids learned some things. It's just a different, measurable. It's a different experience than maybe what we as the land managers would have hoped for, but the kids had a great time. So we have to just keep our expectations real. With time frames, I'm going to read it. I'm going to reference this book, Cradle to Cradle. I'm going to talk about something here for a second. Washington State, nuclear waste reservation, trying to figure out how to put up signage to caution people to stay out and to not do nothing of disturbance in this site. Some tribal members were present, and they were, according to the book here, they were somewhat amused that we were trying to figure out how to put signage up to warn people about nuclear waste that's going to last 10,000 years. So the comment from some of the tribal members was, don't worry, we'll tell them where it is, because we're still going to be here. The author points out, their conception of themselves was that they're still going to be here. They've always been on this land. They've never left, and they expect to be here. And that's just, I don't wear a watch. So it's an interesting perspective. I do find that story actually, profoundly sad in a way, but if all of us here can commit ourselves to looking at longer timeframes and being more responsible and more thoughtful than we currently are, then some good can come out of that story. So Lisa, I would welcome you to chime in with what the audience has, if there have been some.
Yeah. So it's caring for land and people. There's reverence, there's patience and perseverance, paying attention consistently, inheritance. Directed support.
Nice. Thank you for doing that. And thank you all for chiming in. From the beginning, I've said stewardship equals presence. I tend to think in threes. So that's why you have the Trinity Stone there from New Grange, which is a 5,000-year-old archaeological site, by the way. Talk about enduring timeframes. Stewardship equals presence. If you're not there, you're missing all the dynamics that are underway. And you need to choose to be present. We need to make that as a conscious decision. A young man in Ireland told me, Mike, continuity. Stewardship is continuity. And I thought that was amazing. I have only heard that one other time in 12 years. That impressed me. That actually struck me. I had a land manager once tell me, I asked her, I can see that you all have been out here, but I can't figure out what you did, where you did it. What's the logic? Describe your stewardship work for me. And she was a little embarrassed, and she said, well, Mike, it's been patchy and sporadic. I'm like, okay, that explains a lot. And where's the continuity? I mean, and frankly, where's the connection? So I find those three words powerful. And again, thank you for contributing your thoughts to that question. This has been my little credo for a long time. The choices are ours to make. It's yours. I can only urge that you choose wisely for the long term. Because at the end of the day, there's no such thing. There is no such thing as a clean landscape. There will always be carry in and colonization and high water events and issues. But with capable, trained people, we can do early detection, rapid response. What you see, these are both bittersweet sites. Solastrus, so it's Oriental Asiatic bittersweet that we've pulled out of the trees. That was the first couple of years of work. And now we've gotten it down to the ground and we can manage it on the ground. You have a woodland setting on the left and an open field space on the right. And hats off to the volunteers. You can see cut buckthorn stumps just above on the left there, above Linda. And that's how we do it too. We cut things at belt height so we don't have to worry about tripping over them, and they're easy to find when we come back. On the right, those bittersweet vines on the ground are still fruiting, but at maybe 10% capacity, just very little. And there's really no way that the canopy bird traffic, birds coming in for the berries, they're not coming down on the ground to grab berries and then fly off somewhere. So the secret to bittersweet, get it out of the canopy, get it on the ground. So number one, you've reduced the hazard of the weakened trees above you, and you can focus on what you need to do at ground level. And frankly, that is a good deal of uprooting and photosynthesis denial. Again, this is a site in South Burlington. I do think early detection, rapid response is a much more appropriate approach than what I see so often. LDNR, completely ineffective, and that stands for late detection, no response. So yeah, I'm a fan of EDRR. I'd like to point out that landscapes are systems and they are dynamic, and you never know when first freeze is going to be or final freeze. And again, when we're present, we pick up on this and we're right there. I prune apple trees. I was out this morning. I'll be out again. It's that time of year. And really on the landscape, I'm a stress manager. That's what I do. I manage stress. In the case of apple trees, it's supposed to be a positive stress. I'm working for the health of the tree and removing storm damage, ice storm, when they get hammered. But I never manage a tree in less than 3 years. And I tell people what I do is I do my initial cuts. I do my little bit of, basically I'm getting rid of anything that's not functional or that the laws of physics will work negatively toward. And I come back in year 2 and year 3, and I see what the tree is trying to do. So when I respond to the response, I'm trying to let the tree, the individual apple tree, kind of drive, steer the future. And I'm just there to help. Now, in the case of the honeysuckle that you see in the photo, I stepped back from that. I stump cut it a year ago. I came back at it last year, and I was removing resprouts. So when I got to the halfway point, I thought, oh, this would be a good picture. It took me about 10 minutes to clear the left side, and then the right side I'll do and take another 10 minutes to do. But I thought you should see that's about 8 months of resprout from that honeysuckle, which was not permitted to fruit. So since I've put it under a lot of stress. Now I have time on my side to finish off that honeysuckle without putting in the time and effort and disruption of trying to pull it from the ground. That was about 10 feet tall, and that was a good size shrub. I will say, especially if you've been to the Hudson, and I do hope my Hudson River area colleagues are on today. It's scary to see bittersweet and porcelain berry and wisteria. I mean, even poison ivy, even the natives are, wow, the vines are the future, and drought does not seem to shut them down at all. They can keep their feet wet and they can go where they need to go. I will say that the grasses and the herbaceous species are right there with them. So honestly, honeysuckle is so low on my priority list that, I mean, I'll work on it, but I will hammer glossy buckthorn before I'll hammer common buckthorn, because there's a nuance to that. Glossy buckthorn's much more aggressive and needs a lot less time to go by before it's mature and dropping fruit, dropping seed. So these are some recent wisdoms I've come up with in the last few years. You got to watch the vines, because they try to come in, through the back door. Just some shots on the screen here. On the left side and in the center, you have a common buckthorn that had been the canopy taken off. Those are resprouts, and this is what it looks like in the center when you snip off the sprouts. There was even I told you that you got to watch out for those bittersweet vines. There was a vine climbing this buckthorn. So right above my snips there is a bittersweet root that I think I got that all out of the ground nicely. And I just thought it was beautifully ironic to prop it in the buckthorn trunk there to let it dry die. And that's all I have to do. I don't have to pull the vine out or anything. The buckthorn stump to the right, I just wanted to show you how close the gray dogwood can be, and as it has suffered through being dominated and having sunlight taken away from the presence of the buckthorn. But I would not do a stump treatment of any chemicals on that stump, because I have seen, I think honeysuckle is the worst offender. I've seen translocation of herbicide outward from a stump a good 10 feet, and it's sad to lose a maple sapling or a dogwood bush. The dogwood was 6 feet away, but that maple was a good 10 feet. And honeysuckle roots ride high in the soil, and if they're carrying chems, they will certainly reach out that far. So in this case, the dogwood, I'm thrilled to see the native bursting forth, and I will keep that buckthorn in check. I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to pull us off the shrubs here and jump into knotweed. I think we're all familiar. I can just check in. Lisa, any questions? I'll just keep moving unless you flag me.
Yeah, let me flag you out while there are some questions, and I'll wait for those, but some of them are about specific species and things. But sure. Bethany does ask very specifically about knotweed. She said, I've got brown spotted knapweed. Oh, no, you're talking knotweed, not knapweed. I often do that. I actually do that.
No, so knapweed,
I'll get specific questions coming.
Yeah, that's good. Knapweed is one of the herbaceous, and you've seen some photos already. You'll see the map in a minute. South Burlington, 100-acre park, and yes, everyone's concerned about buckthorn. I'm concerned about bittersweet, but autumn olive, multiflora rose, I don't like those thorns, but I can stand at the upwind end of that park and see knapweed, burdock, Phragmites, garlic mustard, elecampane, valerian, comfrey. I mean, all of this herbaceous material spilling, riding the wind and spilling into the park. Wild parsnip. So I mean, this is a big point today. Mind the vines, but don't turn your back on the herbaceous. And that really is a mowing regime. I mean,
and let me ask this question. So one of the things she said it suddenly exploded through the fields last year. Any thought about why? And so is this one of those weird perception things, like it's been there all along? the story that I often tell is if you have an invasive plant that's doubling in size each day, and it's going to entirely cover a pond in 30 days, on what day is it half covered? And that answer is the 29th day. And what day is it, a quarter covered? That answer is the 28th day. So it's been sitting there for a long time before sometimes you notice that explosion.
So let's hold on to that knapweed question. That's a good one. I'm going to come to that, and the map will be instructive in how we address that. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm gonna keep us moving here. The trick with Japanese knotweed is we need to realize there will always be high water events. We're partly responsible for that. Okay, largely responsible for that. In the last 3 years, I've seen 3 septic installations all of a sudden erupt in Japanese knotweed. Why is that? Where's the sand coming from? You have to have specific sand that actually brings a certain filtration capacity. And I know where the sand is coming from, and it's basically down by the river and the brook. So our gravel pits, which go toward road maintenance, and our sand supplies are contaminated with whatever the high water event leaves on the gravel bar. Watch septic installations and watch particularly new construction with roadways. And maintenance. I mean, snow plowing in the middle of winter can still catch some Japanese knotweed and move it along. I want to just point out that if you follow the magic formula that I've come up with for cutting Japanese knotweed 12 times in the first year, 11 times the second year, the formula really goes, it's a 10 to 12 year process. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and you'll get in year 5 or 6, you'll get to a plateau where you really need to come out 5 or 6 times a year, and or less, depending on the sunlight. There you go, on what the orientation of the site is. But you need to learn, and you need to pick up on the fact that in the photo to the left, there are 3 little clumps of Japanese knotweed, and these actually have been chem sprayed twice, not by me, but the landowner called me and said, "Mike, you can see my pointer. That is Japanese knotweed. It turns reddish, and it's like, you haven't killed me yet, and I will be back." And there's some up here towards the top, and there's some right above the nose of my snips, right there. So, and this is a burdock leaf for comparison. That's Japanese knotweed. It is not dead, but with that formula of hammer it hard for 3 or 4 years. I do have a photo. Maybe there's time at the end. I can show you what a site looks like. I have a 12-year-old Japanese knotweed site that now has 20-foot tall, a diversity of trees on it. And I'm proud of that, because those trees would never have gotten there. That site would still be Japanese knotweed if I had not stepped in. It's not dead yet, but the trees are definitely established. This is a brilliant site in northern Vermont where the land stewards, volunteers, have taken the idea of a weed drying station absolutely not to extreme, but this is A+ to them. This is what you do with Japanese knotweed. It's in the back of the photo towards the brook. And rather than transport it to the dump and pay, for disposal and use plastic, they use like 1 sheet of plastic underneath the pallets that you can see in the center. That pallet is for drying rhizomal material, which is the greater spread threat. And on the left, that long line is the cut canes. So much safer, much less threat of something spreading. Once the sun bakes those piles, once the 20 below hits them for 1 or 2 winters, that material will be dead. I wouldn't move it off site. I would certainly feel good about using it on site, and I would pay extra attention to the pile with the rhizomes on it, because that is where the energy resides. But again, hats off here. You'll never have this much material again if you stick with it. So year 1 is always the year where you generate the most material. They'll never see this again. They'll just be able to use those same piles. And after a winter, I've seen 8-foot piles condensed down to just 2 feet in height. You do have to watch the perimeter. I want to point that out with Japanese knotweed. Usually year 2, year 3, you come back and you see that it's run 40 or 50 feet towards better conditions or towards the brook, or it's trying to get away from the stress you're putting on it. So watch that. Here, I wanted to get your, I want you to be ready for a Christmas tree farm shot. I know you're thinking, you ready? There are Christmas trees in this photo. But how do you manage this? I mean, they have to come in and prune the trees and maintain them, but this is this location right here. Wild parsnip, phototoxic to human skin and eyes, and a 9-acre site with Christmas trees on it. Safety is the biggest issue. So I've worked this site, basically north is to the top and the wind's coming in from the west. So I've worked this site from west to east. I'm really, again, you can see my pointer. I've made it to the right side of the building. Virtually everything to the left is cleared out. I've also worked the roadside because I know the mower down to the bottom right is bringing material from the lower right, and it's moving along the road with traffic. That's how they operate. Every time that mower deck shakes or picks up, it's dropping seed. So if I can keep the lower right corner clean in this picture, I can ensure that nothing gets dragged along the roadside and contaminates my quote unquote clean areas. There's another dynamic at play here. I mean, the deer are all over the place. I know which way the sun is and where the wind comes from. But the other dynamic that's really difficult is the Christmas tree harvest. Are they coming through and mow? And I've asked them, I said, you know, hey, it would be really helpful if you would harvest trees from the cleaner section of the property first and truck those out and then come in at the very end and get the ones, because I don't do all the parsnip every year. I can't possibly cover that entire site. And I haven't really gotten anywhere with that conversation. So I've got to go back in and proof my sites to the left and in the front of the building between Route 44 and the building. I've got to go back through and check and see if they dragged, if a truck carried some seed heads, just some dead canes ahead to into clean areas. So be aware of, you know, people are part of the dynamic. I want to just, from this slide, I want to make a suggestion that if you think in terms of waves and bell curves, I think that's both mindset and methods for your notes. Nature operates in bell curves. What you see in the photo to the right, again, that's Wheeler Nature Park in South Burlington, Vermont. We're at about the same latitude as Michigan, roughly. What you see in that photo, that is July. I don't have the date in front of me. 3 wild parsnip plants, Pastinaca. 3 wild parsnip plants, 1 with yellow flowers, 1 in the middle, I'll put my pointer on it, with fruits starting to form. The flowers, the flowers have faded, and the green seeds, the fruits now are forming below the where the flowers were. And what you get after a couple weeks of that is on the right, you see the browned off, hardened seed, and I suspect those are the ones that are viable. So when I come through this site, this is the bell curve. In 2018, I found parsnip at this 100-acre, largely open site. What does that mean? Disaster, hello, passive recreation, people want to walk through here. I found 209 plants the first year. I pulled them all, no seeds hit the ground. The next year I came through, I think 595 pulls. Then I was back at around 500 in year 3. Year 4 was down around 200 again. And this year, 2022, last year, I pulled, it was in the 80s. I think it was 81. Very hard pulling because we've had 4 years of drought in Vermont, 4 consecutive spring, summer seasons of drought. But that's the bell curve. This population is on its way out with a 5, maybe 6-year seed life. That means this is a 6-year control project. I don't know if there's seed coming in. They mow this, so this goes to the knotweed question. This site is supposed to be brush hogged once a year. It was not done last year. That went in my notes. It typically is hogged. So I have to stay ahead of this fella. I'm in communication with him. And I've got to know, hey, are you coming out? Because if I know that he's coming out on Friday, I got to get out there ahead of him and make sure that there's not a browned off, hardened, viable seed head standing in his path. I mean, there's other things in here, curly dock, burdock. And basically the answer to the knotweed question is We tend to do our brush hog work in the fall because you can't get on this site certainly in the spring. It's too wet. You're gonna rut it. You're gonna create all kinds of thrash. You're really limited to summer and fall, and you're trying to preserve nesting bird habitat. So the best thing we can do is get out ahead of seed formation. When you have a large area like this, I've suggested do mowing belts across the direction of wind direction to try to create like a fire break and just hold the knapweed and the burdock and the mugwort. That's another one. Just keep them behind belts of protection, and then we can start to work from the outside. We can work from the upwind side and try to eliminate seed production there, but we can break it up into sections. But it's really hard to control if they're going to mow at all and when they're going to do it. So I come through this site, I'll pull anything that's got viable seed. I may actually walk by the yellow, I may leave the yellow one until my next visit, because I know I've got about 20 days before that yellow flowered parsnip is going to actually make viable seed. It's different for every plant. It's somewhere, 14 days is typical from flower formation to viable seed. So that's the critical window. You've got like 14, 20. I never wait till the 20th day because I'm not a risk taker, but you've got a little bit of a window there. This is the Christmas tree farm, and this is what a weed drying station looks like after you've cleared out, thousands and thousands of parsnip poles. Nothing on that pile is viable. You can see the seed heads. They're all green or yellow. That's the potato fork in the foreground. That's the handle. This is the working ends. Careful. This is my favorite tool. I've got one for each hand. This is Pokey. Say hi, Pokey. Potato fork. You should have one. Like I said, you should have those. You should have truckloads of those. You can pry open the soil, extract the root, close it right back up, step on it with your foot, and it's like you were never there. You're literally causing no soil disturbance. So I wanted you to see this example of a weed drying station. If I were to come back late in the season and pull a bunch that were hot and had viable seed on them, that's what I mean. Those could go in their own drying station, a separate pile, and even be burned off. You could either smother that with a tarp or burn it off with a controlled spot burn. So we've kind of touched on this. I've touched on biosecurity. I have boots that only go on certain sites. I have boots that only go to Massachusetts. They have things in Massachusetts we don't have much of in Vermont. So I'm trying to respect both locations and not be I'm trying not to be a vector. And we should all do that. Integrating across disciplines. I want to make this point. What's going on a landscape? I've talked about mowing and integrating my work, the pulling and the cutting, with the people who do the brush hogging. You need to know everything else that's going on. If you want to think larger scale, think about this. I can look out the window and see the Vermont landscape. The Vermont landscape has been struck by Tropical Storm Irene in 2011. 5 years of extreme dry or drought in the last 7 years. That's a huge stress. 5 out of the last 7 years have been extreme dry. We had our best ever year of maple syrup production. That's great, except I'm a big fan, by the way. Here's my maple syrup. I'm a fan. I'm not saying back off. I'm here to say responsible land management would say, how can you boil off 100 million gallons of water to get 2.5 million of syrup, 2.5 million gallons of syrup? How can you use 3 times as much pesticide three times the quantity that you were using just 10 years ago? In Vermont, we've tripled our pesticide usage just in a decade. And now the Forest Service is coming out with a 12,000 acre timber harvest proposal. That's a stress event. You throw that in there, throw that all together with drought and climate change. I don't know that the land can support all of those extractions or impacts. And I'm not the one to say, but I see it. And I look at apple trees and I see that they're suffering, and I ask myself why. And then I try to act in accordance. When I say here on this slide, think like they do, what that means is think like the plants do. What are they trying to do and where are they trying to go? Japanese knotweed wants to move towards more moist soil. I saw a case of that in Ireland. It's not going to move uphill into cold, dark, dry. It's going to move towards the river if it has any choice in the subject. Think like birds. You always see a ring around white pines and oak trees. That's birds sitting in the branches, dropping the fruits, which contain the seeds. The fruits go right through the birds in like 20 minutes. So think like birds, think like deer. Deer drop a lot of seed when they jump over stone walls, because that's like their break and stride, and whatever's on their coat, whatever is they're carrying along with them, falls off right where they land. This is the large open area that I mentioned just earlier. This is Wheeler Nature Park, and the wind blows from left to right across that screen. The wetlands, I'll do my pointer. There's Phragmites right where my pointer is, and the wetland, follow my pointer, flows right across this lovely landscape and opens up and goes right to the northeast there. Obviously, this Phragmites at the upper end of the flow is a huge priority on this site. I use that as an example of how to prioritize. I'm going to move us through a couple slides here. I want to leave some time for questions. I would urge you to capture long-term transitions by photograph. So certainly set benchmarks. That's what a benchmark is. The same photo from the same location multiple times a year. So stand on a bridge or stand at an intersection, at a stone wall, perhaps at a junction, and take a photo along the wall or along the river channel and note transition over time. Moving forward, I think we talked about this already. If you have students working for 3 hours, how much work do they accomplish? Well, that depends on how you define work. And did they have fun? I will say the pace of work and the accomplishments change over time. I can go to a brand new site that I've never been to before, and I can, in one day, I can girdle, cut, stump cut, uproot, harsh language, whatever my method is, I can treat up to 400 shrubs in a day. I do count, by the way, because I'm working by myself. So that's how I keep myself busy. And I've noticed that when I come back in year 2, 3, 4, my pace goes up to, I've done 885 on one guy's site. So I double my pace, give or take. And you'll notice that if you come back, and you'll see that if you set the stage for your return, wow, the difference really does become noticeable over time. People love that. They thrill, and especially when they're part of it. And of course, I'm going to say safety is not the place to cut corners. I haven't mentioned it yet. Safety glasses, you see the little side wings, got to have your safety glasses. You got your gloves. There's your work gloves. Steel. This is a linoleum knife. Do you need a 12-inch, 10-inch Felco pruning knife? Maybe not. To use as much steel as you need to accomplish the task. No more than that. The big thing on this slide, and you can certainly get a copy of this slide or simply, you can come back and look at the presentation, I know. The big thing here is 4th of July. When you're trying to break seed formation, everything you do before the 4th of July is enough stress on a buckthorn or an autumn olive to cut it at stump level and break seed formation for that year. They will resprout, but if you do 3 stress events in 2 growing seasons, basically you're going to kill off 75 to 90% of your shrubs unless they have their feet wet and you come out and sing to them. 3 stress events in 2 growing seasons is enough to kill most shrub species. If you can get out and do it before the 4th of July, you will break seed formation for that year. And then you have time, you can come out and work right into December, come back and stress them again. So I try to hit as many mature plants as I can early, and I can't possibly be everywhere, but that is such a crucial notion. I should go back and say, in winter is when you safe your sites. And I did have some people ask me, what should we be doing this time of year, Mike? Well, you should be cutting out the barbed wire. You should be getting rid of steel, old steel in the landscape, flagging, reducing overhead hazards. This is your leather bush hat. I got some stitching to do up here. You waterproof your headgear and you sharpen all your tools. So that's what you do in winter. So I'm about to wrap up here and just mention that when it comes to your measurables and your deliverables, this is what counts. And this is the Youth Conservation Corps, Vermont, working at Wheeler Nature Park, which you saw earlier. These young people freed up, exposed this massive, magical oak tree that's referred to as the honey oak. People come to this tree now and they build elf houses and fairy castles, and they leave messages. This was off the trail. People knew it was there from afar, but there was no way to get to this tree. So these young people did brilliant work. It's actually harder for me now because I got to work around elf castles, and I don't know how to build those, so I can't knock one over because then I'm in trouble. So this is just magical. There is a wetland behind the photo there, but there was really no ecological reason to argue. You could say, why did you manage this location, Mike? And I say, when I see something magical, when I see a future oak grove, because there's more than one oak tree in this picture, by the way. When I see cedars in a circle and I think this is a cedar circle, this is kind of magical, there's going to be an oak grove here someday. And oak groves have a long history of being special places. And these young people in the photo know, because we talked about it, they are part of that. So we created something here. To me, that's a very critical deliverable, and I'm just overjoyed when that kind of thing happens. So here, I think I say thank you. I've droned on a bit, but maybe I stop here and take questions, Lisa.
Yeah, that sounds great. And with just a couple minutes, one of the things that I want to share is the idea that you really can do this work. So a couple of people are dropping in the chat, I'm so overwhelmed, what can I do? It does make a difference. And when you start, you can feel like you're alone. It's one of the reasons that I say the Stewardship Network is here, because we know that this work can be hard and overwhelming to do alone. And you can take a look towards our spring challenge that will be in the spring. That's all about elevating and celebrating the work and the successes and the setbacks, for sure. But we want to let you know that this stewardship work is possible. You can remove all of those Norway maples in that oak hickory forest that you were talking about. So just know that that's possible. And Mike, I'm going to pose one question to you. Lots of questions about specific species, and I encourage people to reach out. We can share some other resources in the chat. One question: tips for building a weed drying pile, and along with that, the kind of how do you drag multiflora rows without getting all cut up?
Oh, that's great. That's brilliant. So you touched on it. So I have to pose for a second here because I wore a t-shirt for the occasion. So the bandana around my neck is my first aid kit. So I never go anywhere without that because I work alone frequently. And I mentioned the eyeglasses, multiflora rose, Japanese knotweed, they will come for your face. And I insist on people, you have got to wear eye protection because I am not it's going to be messy if I have to fix your eyeballs. So don't go there. You don't want to get ripped up. So the bush hat is critical for multiflora rose. So you have a choice. The best thing to do, what I enjoy doing is telling the landowner, wow, look at that multiflora rose. You have time. This is what you do. You get your little hand snips and you come out and you literally snip 6 inches at a time. And you reduce that bush down to a big skeleton, like just standing there, just nothing green left on it. And if you cut it down to 6-inch pieces, I mean, you can cut off the big arms of it and the long 20-foot long tendrils, but then you have these snakes, lying on the ground that are going to wrap around your ankles and trip you and come up and slap you around the neck and the face. Cut it down to 6 inches right there on the spot. It takes time, but you'll never have to do it again. That's huge. Here's the shirt. Organic. I don't know. Is that backwards? Sure, it costs more.
It's more.
It's worth more. That's my message. That's my message for the day. The weed drying station actually is on my website, and it is at the home page. If you scroll down on the page you first come to, there's a couple examples. Basically, pallets are free. You're doing people a favor to get pallets. You can set them up. It's up to you how you structure it, but you're trying to reduce drag time. So set up 3 or 4 drying stations. Put a post in the ground so you let people know this is not garbage. Don't drag this away. And because that's not what you want. put up a post, mark it, and reduce your transportation time. The pallets will decompose over time, and you can always come back to that site and smother it with a tarp or burn it in place if you're afraid that if you see a big eruption of seed, that's okay, because at least you've consolidated 9 acres down into like 3 piles. That's
Right.
good. That was a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Well, and so many more questions. I want to thank you all for posing them. I want to thank you all for answering them in each other's chat. I really think that I love that exchange during the chat when people can answer each other's questions there and take care of that. I want to thank you, Mike, for sharing with us for this past hour. Thank you all online for joining us. As we close, I want to remind you that the TSN job board is exploding right now. It's field season. If you're looking for a job, go there. If you're posting a job, go there. People have said they've asked their top candidates where they heard about the job. People have said TSN job board. Events calendar also exploding. Go there to post your events, to find your events. Gloves for good as the field season comes up. We've distributed more than 12,000 pairs of gloves, saving people 19,000 pounds of $19,000 in supply costs. We ship them to you for just the shipping costs. And if you're here local in Southeast Michigan, you can come and pick them up. Check out the Gloves for Good program. And we will be back. As I said, each and every second Wednesday, we are here during the Eastern Time Zone's noon hour, and we will be joined by Tyler Mitchell, who will be talking about aquatic resources, challenge, opportunities, and management. So really looking forward to being here with Tyler and all of you next month. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, stay safe, and keep sharing ideas and information. We're here for you each and every day. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.